Hello, and welcome to the first AFA webinar series episode of 2025. What I Wish I Knew, Practical Money Lessons for Your Career. My name is Chelsea Buzik, and I am the Senior Manager of Development and Alumni at AFA. And I am incredibly excited to kick off this session with an official welcome to our speaker, Jake Erceg, in a few moments. But first, wanted to lift up a few points to help guide the conversation and engagement over the next hour. You've already seen that we've posted in the chat. Be sure to take some time to lift up where you're calling in from today, and with an emoji or gift, how's your day going? And it's okay to be real here, because we're going to get real here in a couple minutes with the content that Jake's going to present. So first off, wanted to welcome you all officially and talk about some house rules. So Jake is going to be sharing some content with us over the next hour. If at any point you have a question, be sure to put that question in the chat. That's my main role here, is to make sure I'm keeping an eye on that chat for you and to lift up those questions in the moment so we can get them answered, because most likely than not, other people have those same questions. Please also use that chat as an engagement tool. You are here to not just gain awesome content from Jake, but also to meet some people. So be sure to share those stories and give some personal experiences to what Jake is sharing so that we can keep those conversations going. And last but not least, AFA is recording this session as we speak, and we're going to share that recording out in the follow-up email afterwards. So please feel free to share that recording out with your team members and your friends and anybody else who you think would relate well to the information. Next up, wanted to put the next AFA webinar series session on your calendar. So please save the date. It's going to take place on April 16th at noon Central Time. And what you can expect from us is it's going to be an update from industry leaders on the status of avian flu and what that means for you. And yes, of course, your price of eggs as well. And then also, let's get social. So if you are not already following AFA on our social media platforms, you can see those listed above in addition to TikTok. That's Chelsea's personal favorite. So be sure to follow us to get the latest and greatest information from AFA and how to stay engaged. And then, of course, continue to grow your network with all of the AFA friends that follow us there as well. And then also, if you haven't heard yet, AFA has launched not one, but 2 podcasts. That's right. We love talking to you, and we love sharing all the different information resources out there that we are able to gain from our industry partners and our students. And so you'll see those 2 podcasts listed in the presentation. First one on the left-hand side is Magnetic Ag Ears Edition. So that is your weekly industry news update around all things ag that you should be in the know about. And then on the right-hand side, we have our Cultivating Leaders podcast. That takes a little bit of a deeper dive into mentorship, leadership, and what the future of ag is going to look like. And our most recent episode is where we highlighted Ebony Weber with Manners, one of AFA's partners. So be sure to check that out this week. And then last but not least, did you know that April is National Volunteer Month? AFA has many different ways that you can volunteer with us throughout the year, and they're all virtually. So it's really all about when you can make the time to do it. Our next volunteer opportunity for virtually is April 17th through the 24th. However, you can sign up today using that friendly QR code. So be sure to sign up so that you can review and score essays of students applying to attend 2025 AFA Institutes. It takes maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through the 10 to 15 applications that we send your way. But if you are a industry professional on the call or somebody that's post-grad, you are eligible to volunteer and review those essays, and we hope you do so. So while I stop sharing my screen and allow Jake to share his, I'm also going to share a little bit more about Jake, his bio, and why he's here to talk to us today. So Jake works for Elanco Animal Health as the nutritional health team leader for swine. His role encompasses multiple facets of marketing, sales, business development, and innovation. Jake's passion is working closely with customers and the Elanco internal organization to find creative ways to drive business growth and help organizations reach their goals. So why is he here? Jake is also super passionate about making his money work for him to help foster a feeling of security, freedom, and financial independence, and being able to reach his retirement goals. All right, without further ado, welcome, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsea. Thumbs up. We're good on sound and audio, everything before we move forward. Awesome. Great, great, great. Okay. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super excited to go through this. For the whole group, right? Finances and especially practical finances can be a little bit dry. So we're going to try to keep the tone upbeat and give you guys some good examples and some different things, real world scenarios to walk through here. I am kind of if for any of you who do disc or insights, I do have a high C and some blue energy. So I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum when we get to some of the math stuff. So I tried to keep the Excel spreadsheets as low as I could, or as short as I could, but we are going to have a little bit of that today. So really excited to walk through some of this stuff. Some of this is just generic basic knowledge and kind of base level knowledge. So we'll get some of that out of the way. Some of this gets a little bit more in depth on a couple of the different subjects, especially budgeting, debt management, and investments. So when we get to that stage, we'll dive maybe a little bit deeper into some of those different topics and discussions. And then some of this stuff I'm going to share with you guys just some personal experience as well. Some things that worked for my wife and I in our financial world that we live in, and some of the different kind of tools or things that we use personally. I'm not sponsored by anything, so I'm going to hit you guys with some brands today and some different apps and stuff that we use, or some financial institutions that we work with. I wish I was getting a commission check from them, but that is absolutely not the case. So if I bring up a couple different, I try to keep the examples of some of those things kind of generic across with some different companies or different things. But like I said, there's some things that we know and we use and have had great success with. So I'll bring those up. Once again, just to reiterate Chelsea's kind of comments, throw your questions in the chat as they come up. We're going to keep this super conversational and happy to work through all this with you guys. All right, here we go. So here we go. So the agenda for today, potentially, just a quick run through of all the different topics we're going to cover, right? So we're going to start off with job negotiation. And this presentation is set up for those of you who may be coming directly out of college or getting ready to start a career. Those of you who are kind of in that young professional, mid-professional phase. And then hopefully if there's anyone who is maybe later on in their career, 15, 20 years in, we've got some content for you as well. So just some different points all the way through, hopefully to hit the broad audience range. So the topics we're going to cover: job negotiation. We're getting into a little bit of that. And then traveling for work, just one slide, but mostly focusing on winning the credit card game. So if you've got some discipline and that's something that you're willing to do, then we're going to talk through that as well. We're going to get pretty in depth on the next three: budgeting, debt management, and investments. We're going to dive into that pretty hard and kind of go pretty deep with lots of different examples around those three those three subject areas. Financial advisors, we're going to get into that a little bit. Are they fake? Are they real? Spoiler alert, they're real. But there are some scams we got to watch out for. So we're going to kind of cover a couple of those as well too. And then round off with some apps and some technology that can help you. Thank goodness for that. And helping us be more disciplined. And then some financial advice, some social media stuff. We're going to cover a little bit of that, right? There's a lot of great financial advice out there. And hopefully we'll get through that through this whole presentation. And then I'll give you some watch outs maybe on some poor financial advice or some things that we see out there on social media all the time that is maybe not the best, or it could be okay, but just super, super risky. So we'll kind of end on that note. And then FAQs, key learnings, questions kind of at the end as well too. So to start us off, job negotiation. All right, everyone I'm sure on this call has heard the key to job negotiation is know what you're worth, right? We've all had someone tell us that, know your worth, or know what you should get paid, or know what that looks like, right? But the biggest question, at least the question I had when I kind of started, was like, how do I do that? How do I know what I'm worth? That's a really hard question, I mean, to me, I'm worth a lot, I think, right? And hopefully all of us feel the same about ourselves, that we're excited about what we know and our knowledge and our ability to contribute to an organization. But how do we put a price tag on that, or what are some things, right? And I wish there was some sort of like golden answer that I could give you of here's the perfect tool to type in all of your qualifications and boom, it will spit you out a number and tell you exactly what you're worth. Unfortunately, the answer is a little bit more broad and a little more generic, but there are some resources that we can walk through here that can help us understand that. So I would say first check the limited number of online resources first, right? I know as an example of that, the animal health industry has a really nice survey that they do. So they'll ask questions. I participate in the survey personally. I know a lot of my other coworkers at Elanco participate in the survey as well too. So there's access to that survey online. I can provide that information with Chelsea, and if she sends out any follow-up information, we can send that out in a follow-up link that you guys can access that information. So there are some available resources online like those surveys, and that can be a good first step for anyone to start no matter where you're at in your career. Next is make mentors and ask them questions. And this is the one, guys, I'm going to stress the most important in this slide is make mentors and ask them questions. People in the industry, they love to talk about their success. They love to talk about their path and what they've been through and the different route that they've taken. And so it's really important to network in your industry. And here's a perfect example of why is when you make those mentors and you're able to do some of the research with those mentors and ask them the right questions, they can help kind of point you in the direction and give you some context around, especially this specific topic of knowing what you're worth. Another way to do that is to interview for multiple jobs and diversify kind of the knowledge or the experience that you get. So if you're coming straight out of college, or maybe you're in your mid-professional point in your career, right? You've been at work 5 years, 10 years. It's totally okay to go out and interview for multiple different opportunities, even if you think, hey, maybe this isn't an exact fit just based off a description I've read. When you go through the interview process, you're going to learn a lot about your qualifications. You're going to learn a lot about the things that are required for maybe that job that sounded interesting. And then if you get to the point of salary discussions or negotiations, then you're going to get to see some real world numbers given to you by companies, and that's going to give you some more perspective as well. So like I said, do some research is super important. Ask your friends, ask colleagues, ask professors, excuse me, and then ask other professionals as well too, especially for those mentors. When you're asking those questions, just a quick tip, let's make sure we're asking for a range, not an exact number. So, you guys can say, hey, Jake, I've got 3 years of experience. I'm interested in sales. What kind of range of salaries can I be talking about? Or what kind of range of numbers would I be looking for? Am I okay in asking for 60 to 75,000? Am I okay in asking for 100 to 150,000, right? Make sure to ask for ranges from your mentors and maybe not an exact number of what they make or what their coworkers make. But asking for ranges is totally fine and totally acceptable. And don't be afraid to work with a recruiter either on some of this stuff. There's some great recruiting organizations out there that do an awesome job, and they're at no cost to you usually, right? So be a little weary of that, but most recruiting organizations are getting paid by the companies that they're working for, or the companies they're working with. And so using a recruiting organization to understand that value, you can show them your resume, you can talk about your experiences with the recruiter, and they should be able to help you figure out from their experience as well too, what the levels that they've experienced and the things that they've seen as well. So just a couple different ways that we can do some research to find out what we're worth. Now, once you've got that, or once you've got that kind of data point and that knowledge in your head, it's really important to be logical and backing up everything that you bring up, right? So when we're in job negotiations, the biggest piece of advice I can give you, once you've figured out your worth, or once you've figured out the things you want to ask for, make sure you have a logical reason to back that up, right? You're not coming out and saying, I want $100,000, or I want $50,000. And you're just saying that you pulled this number out of nowhere, right? You haven't done your research, you haven't asked your mentors. You're just finding these things out of thin air because it's what you want. That's great, and that's awesome to ask for what you want, and that's important. But make sure we have a logical reason behind what we're asking for, right? So if you're going to ask for, here's a couple of just quick examples, right? If you're going to ask for a salary increase, maybe ask for more responsibility. Be willing to bring up some of the added qualifications or added value that you bring, and then show people why, or show your potential employers why they should pay more for you. If you can't justify it logically, it's probably not worth asking for. And that's something that I've learned in salary negotiations. It's something we've learned, me and my wife both as a couple, as we've continued to increase our salaries in our career and grow our careers and ask for different things in job negotiations. So when you're sitting down looking at it and you say, okay, these are the things I want to ask for, make sure we have logical reasons to back them up. And if we don't have any logical ways to justify, it's probably not worth asking for, or it's probably not a realistic ask. Okay. So a couple other things, a couple other examples there. If you're going to ask for a signing bonus, maybe you need some more income for a home office setup. Maybe you need some more income for a moving expense, something like that, right? And you're asking for that in the form of a signing bonus. Or for stock options, right? Maybe you need a path to ownership. Maybe that's really important to you. Maybe you're trying to give yourself some more motivation to grow the business, outside of maybe a bonus or something like that. You're asking for a stock option or for ownership because you have that kind of path set forward. Maybe you're someone who's really driven by entrepreneurial opportunities, and this is a way to ask for that. So a quick few other things I thought would be fun to kind of talk through. What are some other things just than salary or money that I can ask for or try to negotiate for in my job? Maybe I'm happy with the salary that the company is offering, and I want to make some asks for some other sort of types of things. So what are some of those things that are realistic and out there to ask for? So one, maybe you're going to travel a lot for your job, and travel conditions can be tough. I mean, if you're on the road a lot, 30, 40, 50, 60+%, some of these different asks can really help, right? And maybe an example of those are, you only want to stay in three-star hotels, right? Make sure we have the logic behind that, right? Sleep is super important. It's important for me to feel comfortable and safe when I'm traveling on the road. Those are some good logical reasons to ask for maybe some of those hotel situations that could be a little bit maybe more expensive to the company, but provide you with higher quality of experience while you're traveling. And then maybe you're going to fly a lot. So you ask for an economy plus or a business select type situation where you can travel and book those airline tickets that are going to give you a little more comfort, get you a little more status, and then put you in a little bit better position when you're flying. That's one personally, I got to admit, that I do ask for. And in every job negotiation I've ever done, I have the economy plus, or I'm a Delta guy, so it's Delta Comfort Plus, Economy Plus at United. I do ask for that at every job negotiation I do. I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'4". So it's important for me to have a little bit extra legroom, a little bit extra comfort when I'm traveling. So that is something that I've always asked for and have gotten successfully negotiated into all the different positions in my career as well. So just a real good example for you guys. A couple other things here in job negotiations. We touched on stock options or ownership shares just a little bit. This is a chance for you to have ownership in the company, depending on the size of the company. You can ask for a signing bonus. Those are real. I mean, they're not real necessarily in every single job or every single position, but they are more real than a lot of us realize, and they are more common maybe than we think. So those are totally okay things for ask for. Know that when you do ask for a signing bonus, a lot of times it comes with quote unquote golden handcuffs, right? And what those are usually just a time agreement to the company. So if you're asking for a $10,000 signing bonus, to remember we have a logical description behind it, right? So you want to set up your at-home office, you want to stimulate your income a little bit more without asking for more salary. You've got your logical reason. A lot of times companies are going to ask you to sign a 1, 2, 3-year agreement to stay with the company, or you do have to pay that signing bonus back. So that is normal. That is standard. So don't worry about those types of things when they do come across, but that is pretty standard with the signing bonus. Another thing to ask for is a relocation package. If you have to change locations for work, maybe you have to move, ask for those relocation costs to be covered, or at least help with them. A couple other things that kind of fit into that vehicle or that bucket a little bit of relocation is a vehicle or a place to live. There's ways to negotiate around a company vehicle or a company vehicle stipend, maybe. If your company isn't providing you with a vehicle, there's opportunities. If you're traveling a lot for work, especially, that's where the company vehicle or a vehicle stipend can come in very, very handy as well. And And then maybe if you're having to relocate, don't be afraid to ask for a hotel or Airbnb or some other type of a short-term rental or place to live while you've moved to that new location and you're looking for a more permanent spot. So those are all very reasonable requests. And then sometimes there are companies out there that will provide you with assistance selling your house or buying a new one. So I know that is one piece of Elanco. They do offer that service. If you're going to move for a job, there's a relocation package that they kind of have standard. And one of the pieces of those packages is kind of helping you with maybe selling, some of the nuances of selling your house and then some of the types of things with buying a new one. So all these things in job negotiation are totally okay for us to ask for when we're working through that. One quick slide on traveling for work, because a lot of us will get in jobs that we do have to travel. So just a couple different things or strategies, key tricks here to make your travel experience a little bit better. Airline miles, man, if you can, try to pick an airline and stick to it. Status makes your life so much better. It makes the travel process so much smoother. From someone, I travel 60+% for my job, so on the road a lot. And let me tell you what, guys, those airline miles can be absolutely awesome, and the status can definitely make your travel a lot easier. Makes lines shorter. It makes the process smoother at check-in, all of that stuff. Same with rewards programs around car rentals and hotels. If you can do the same type of thing, pick a hotel. If you're a Hilton guy or a Marriott lady or whatever your preferences may be, pick a hotel and try to kind of stick with it. The same process there. Now, I did talk about credit card points a little bit in the intro. Some companies have credit cards that they're going to give you, and so you'll miss out on that, and some allow some of the personal credit card benefits. This is really I like to call it kind of a feast or famine situation here, because if you're disciplined with your credit card points and turning in your expense reports and going through that process, it can get you a free vacation. I mean, I know my wife and I, when in my previous role before I started Elanco, it was all personal credit cards and we turned in reimbursements. So we were able to use our personal card and gain all of those points and those miles through credit cards. It was awesome. I mean, it bought us at least 2 round trip tickets every year for our vacation, and that was great. But there is a little bit of carelessness that can get you into some trouble, so you got to be really careful. So just a quick math example here, right, to run through, and it's the same for your personal credit cards, and just really it helps us understand the importance of paying off credit card debt and getting rid of interest payments, right? So if you spend about $5,000 a month on a credit card for points, that's about 60 grand, and that's about 90,000 credit card points. That's huge. And it could be worth, depending on your credit card program, it could be worth anywhere from 5,000 to, or excuse me, 500 to $1,000 worth of travel miles, which is great. But if you take that same example, you get $60,000 in debt. You're going to try to pay off that debt, and you're going to pay $3,000 a month. It's going to take you 2 years, and you're going to pay about 12 grand in interest. Same on the example. If you're only going to pay $1,000 a month on that debt, it's going to take you 10 years, and it's going to cost you $70,000. So just some examples here of discipline and how important it is on some of those credit cards. And really quickly, if you say, hey, just spending $5,000 a month, not being disciplined with a credit card can get me in debt really quick. And then bam, look at those interest things or those interest payments we're going to have to pay off really, really big. So just keep that in the back of your mind. This can be a really great situation that can benefit you. But if we're not disciplined on paying off the credit card, the interest will absolutely destroy us, or could absolutely destroy us and hurt some other goals too. So like I said, it's a feast or famine type situation. I think for you have to decide, do I have the discipline to do this or not? And that's a decision we all kind of have to make.
Yep. Jake, quick question in the chat. What's your preferred travel card?
My preferred travel card, so I'm a Chase guy. I like Chase preferred. So I would check out Chase, and then I would also check out Amex. There are some other things that kind of come with Amex. They're starting to be accepted a lot more. But a lot of the American Express cards have some really, really great travel rewards. If you go online and Google best travel rewards cards, there's a lot of great websites that have done, New York Times has even done some article comparisons around the travel cards and the benefits. I think just look at the different cards, look at the point values. Some of them offer point multipliers, like Chase, for example. We get a 3x multiplier on all of the money we spend on airline tickets, restaurants, and other travel type things. So Ubers or taxis, all that stuff. So whatever you think you're going to be buying the most, check those credit card multipliers. But Chase and Amex are two that I would definitely take a look at for travel cards. All right, so now we're going to jump into budgeting. Budgeting is amazing and challenging at the same time, but the reward is higher than any other thing I think we're going to talk about here today. So why should I budget, and convince me to do it? Knowing where your money is going and knowing your money coming in and your money going out is the most important concept that we're going to talk about today. Because once you know what's coming in and you know what's going out, you can allocate it properly in the in-between when you have it and make sure it's going out into the right places. And that is absolutely huge. So how do I do that? I make a budget, right? That's step one, and we're going to go through some examples of what some different budgets look like. It could be very simple. It could be very complex. It depends on what your style and what your goals are, but make a budget. And then the next step is to stick to it. And guys, it's totally okay. You will fail at this, I promise. Like as a person now who is 100% committed to a budget, there are months or times or situations where we fail at this as well, right? We get outside of our budget and we don't exactly fix to the categories. That's okay. It's gonna happen. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it be the end of the world. It's okay if you fail your budget at one time. Let's just use that as motivation to move forward and try to stick to it in the future. So stick to your budget as much as you can. It's totally okay to adjust the categories too as things go on. Sometimes in your life, you're going to spend a little bit more on food. Sometimes you're going to spend a little bit more on gas. And those are great. So maybe 1 month you adjust the food category up, you adjust the gas category down, and maybe vice versa, right? It's okay to adjust the categories of your budget. Once you make it, it doesn't have to be that same budget for the rest of your whole life, right? It's going to evolve as your life changes as well, too. Let me tell you this, it will suck at first. As someone who came from never using a budget in their life through college and then growing up to someone who was trying to go to a really strict budget, it definitely sucked. It was like trying to go to the gym when you've never been to the gym before. It takes some time to get addicted. It takes some, maybe not addicted, but it takes some time to make it a priority in your life and to make it a habit, right? But once you do, it's just like the gym, right? It's a great habit that we all like to get into, and exercise is important. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but on the terms of budgets, it's going to suck at first. Just be prepared for that, because it will be one of the best habits that you have created, right? And the biggest thing then to take away from budgeting, right, is to just know where your money goes. Like that's all we're trying to do with the budget. We're not trying to control our lives. We're not trying to, necessarily set limits for ourselves. We're just trying to understand, hey, where is all of our money going, and what does that look like? So let's hop into a couple example budgets here. 3 different kind of types that I broke this down into. A simple budget. Maybe it's just your investments, your bills, and another category, right? It's a great way to start. And like I said, all we're trying to do is track the big picture things, right? What's coming in and what's going out. Very, very simple, very big picture. Maybe then we move to a more moderate budget, or someone who wants to get a little more aggressive with the different categories. Maybe we build in some other things, right? You have your bills by category. You maybe have a fun category, a food category, etc. You start to build in a little bit more of these buckets inside your budget of where your money goes to. This is a great way to improve your financial goals, right? If you're trying to save for something, if you're trying to invest to a certain goal, which we'll talk a lot more about, this is a great way. Adding a couple more categories into a simple budget, maybe to get it to a more moderate budget, is a great way there. And then, like I said, don't ever be afraid to readjust your simple budget to see where things fit. And then as you build these financial goals, or you get to a place where, hey, maybe I want to start saving for vacation. Maybe I want to start saving up for some big purchase that I want in my life. That's maybe where we move from a simple budget maybe to a more moderate type budget. And then the third one is a very, very thorough budget. This is where everything has a category, and every dollar that comes in goes into a specific bucket or a specific category. And this can help you really dial in your goals and your finances. And it is the best way to accomplish your financial goals. So none of these different budgets are better than the other by any means, but all of them are better than nothing, right? So for those of you that aren't working with a budget and you don't utilize one of these strategies, the best thing that you can do is to jump in and start budgeting right now. So we'll walk through each. Oh, yes, Chelsea, go for it.
Quick question in the chat, and maybe you're gonna cover this, but
Yep.
question around what is the best platform to make a budget in?
Yep. So I will touch on that just a little bit. I'll give you guys some examples of some budget platforms. So if you don't mind parking that question just 1 second, if we get to the end of budgeting and I still haven't answered it, hit me with it again, and then we'll make sure we get that answered. So a couple examples here just of what a simple budget could look like, right? I just made this in Excel. So one of the things that you can do is you can use Excel. Microsoft Excel is a great tool, or Google Sheets, right? Similar type program. If you want to make a very simple budget, this is what it could look like, right? So if our monthly income pre-tax is about 5 grand, we do a 10% in our 401k. We do 1% in a stock option maybe that we buy from our company. It offers a stock option. Our take home is about $3,850. We have about $1,550 in bills and about $2,300 in other expenses, right? This is what a simple budget can look like. And it can be, like I said, very limited bucket of bills and other expenses, right? It doesn't have to be super detailed. It doesn't have to be really, really in depth. And it kind of just tracks where our what money's coming in, what money's going out, right? And as long as we know that, we can do it on a monthly basis and kind of understand where that's going on, right? So I gave kind of some of the criteria there on the left-hand side of what that looks like. I also understand too, maybe some of you guys are looking at this and like, Jake, I have way more than $1,500 in bills every month. I totally understand that. This is just a simple example, right? So you'll adjust your own categories for whatever those look like. And then one thing too with budgeting that's important and investing, as we'll get into talk about in a little bit, is in this situation, you'll see in all of our budgeting situations, we invested first, right? So we did that very first before we got our take-home income. And that way, even if we overspend or even if we have to adjust those categories a little bit, we've invested and we've paid our bills first. And those are the most important things in a budget, or in this simple budget at least. So here's the example of a moderate budget. Like I said, we added in some more categories. Once again, I just did this in Excel and popped it over for example. Same kind of situation with the 5 grand a month income. We invested first, right, with our 401k and our stock investments that we did through the company. So then we got our take home money, and then that gets split up into some of the other categories, right? So this is where we split out bills a little bit with mortgage, utilities, and internet as examples. And then we split out that other expenses category into food, auto and gas, fund, insurance, and then in this example, maybe we're saving for a trip, right? We want to save up for our vacation, so we've got that in there as well. Why is it important to break out some of those expenses? Why is that? What's the justification for that? Really to know better where your money is going, and then know what specific areas that you can cut or change. So maybe you find out one day, hey, I'm spending $1,000 a month on food, and I'm single and living by myself, and is that realistic, right? Can I cut back a little bit? Maybe I eat more at home. I don't eat out as much, or maybe I go to Chipotle a couple more times instead of going out to a fancy restaurant a couple more times, right? That gives us the flexibility to make those kind of changes and say, hey, maybe next month I won't spend as much on food. I want to save. I want to invest a little bit more. I want to spend a little bit more on fun, right? I want to go out a little bit more with my friends. I want to go play some golf for any golfers out there, then maybe we can adjust some of those categories, right? And then in that situation too, we can use some multiple different accounts to that advantages, right? So you can open up multiple savings account, you can open up multiple checking accounts if it makes it easier for you, right? So if you have one savings account that you want to save for your trip or your vacation, and you want to open up another one and save for investing, that's totally okay to do. If you have one checking account that pays all your bills, all your bill money goes in there at the beginning of every month, you just automatically transfer it over, you pay your bills out of all that account, then you have another account for all your fun and your other expenses. This is a way to kind of break things up and make it easier for you, right? It also kind of puts a little bit of a roadblock in and says, hey, I have to go transfer that money out of one of those other accounts to put it in the fun account. So if you get down to the end of the month and the fun account runs a little low and you're like, man, maybe I shouldn't make this transfer. Or maybe I should hold off until next week when payday comes and the budget resets. It kind of just gives you a little bit of a roadblock that you have to jump over and say, is this the best decision? And maybe it is, and so we're going to do that. We're going to transfer money. We're going to go have fun. And maybe it's not. And so it gives us another way to kind of think about that. So don't be afraid to use multiple accounts. You don't just have to have one checking and one savings account. with your bank. You can have multiples, and there's some advantages as well to that. All right, and here's a more thorough budget. This is a screenshot right out of my wife and I both use a budgeting app called Every Dollar. And so it's named because every single dollar that comes into your budget and goes out of your budget gets tracked through the budget. We link our bank accounts, our checking and savings accounts to the budget. So every time we swipe a card or do something financially, boom, it automatically pops up in the budget, and then we allocate it to a category. So it allows you to plan out where every single dollar goes, which is awesome. And then we definitely recommend you using an app that syncs to the accounts, right? Every dollar is an example. When we get back to the question that was asked, that's one app. I know Rocket Money has been really getting popular as well too. That's another budgeting app as well that you can get into. And then also some of the bigger banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, some of them are starting to incorporate budgeting into their app as well. So you can use the bank's app or you can use a third party. I highly recommend linking your checking and savings accounts or your credit cards to those budgeting apps. So that way every account or every transaction pops up, and it makes it a lot easier for you and saves you some time. You don't have to go in there and make adjustments or make additives all the time, right? It's going to save you a bunch of time. So, and once again, guys, on the budgeting thing, it's totally okay to adjust it, and it's totally okay to fail. That just as long as we're using those failures, learning from them, and using that as motivation in the future. All right, we're switching out of budgets and going towards debt management. This can be a little bit of a sticky topic. So I'm going to give you a lot of personal examples. I'm going to give you some math examples to kind of back up some of the different things. But here we go, right? So I've heard some debt can be good. The answer to that is yes. There is such thing as good debts. And here's an example of that, right? Especially at really low interest rates. Some of us who have owned homes for a while now got to take advantage of some of the COVID interest rates and maybe have our mortgage at 3%. That is awesome, and that is great. It is okay to have debt at very, very low interest rates, especially personal debt like a mortgage. So if we have a debt rate that's really low, like 3% interest rate on our mortgage, that is good debt. And in all things considered, that is really great debt, right? And why do we call that good debt, or why do we call that great debt? And it really comes down to this concept of arbitrage. Okay, and arbitrage, all that big financial word means is it's the difference between the interest rate that you have that you can make money on and the interest rate that you're paying your debt on. So there's the example right there. If your debt rate is 3% and the income rate of an interest rate, maybe like an investment, right? For example, if we're going to invest in the S&P 500 and it's growing at 7%, that difference of 4% is the income you're going to make over the money that you would put on your house. Okay. So that's a little bit of a concept, or a little bit of a complicated concept, but I tried to break it down as easily as I could. So if you're paying 3% for the interest on your house, when you could take that extra money that you'd put on your house normally, you could invest it and get a return rate of about 7%. You're going to make that 4% in income over the debt, right? So low interest rate debt is not always bad, and it's not always a thing that we need to pay off directly or very, very quickly, right? But at the end of the day, you do have to kind of make this choice on your own. Are you excited about making the interest money and making that arbitrage? Or are you more focused on, hey, I want to get rid of my payments. Like, I don't want those monthly payments. I want to get rid of those. I want to pay those down. That's a choice you got to make on your own and feel what you're comfortable with. And I'm sorry, that's a very gray answer, but it is kind of just the truth, right? Some of this financial stuff, we're going to get advice, and then we got to make our own decisions with that advice that we get. So now let's take a look at some examples of interest rates working against you, or what is kind of be termed as bad debt, right? So an example of a vehicle purchase, let's say we bought a car for 35 grand, we put 7,000 down, or 20%, or our loan payment is, our loan period is about 72 months. So that's getting more and more common for a 72-month loans. We got that at 8%, which is a pretty real auto interest rate right now. We're going to take a loan out for $28,000, but it's going to cost us an extra $7,500 over that 6 years to pay that loan off. So now if our money is only making 7% in the market, but we're paying 8%, we're losing that 1% situation, right? Or at the end of the life of that vehicle, or at the end of the 6 years of that loan period, we'll have paid $7,500 extra for that car than we would have paid had we paid it off more aggressively. So when you get some of these higher interest rates, it makes more sense to be aggressive in our payment. And we're going to go through that in a little more detail as well, too. Another example on a house purchase, say we bought a $400,000 house, we put 20% down. We've got a 360 month or loan term, right, at 7%, which is pretty common right now. Just to give you guys an example, we took a loan out for $320,000. We then paid $410,000 on interest. So that $400,000 house over that 30-year period is really going to cost you about $730,000, right? So when we're in that situation, and we've got higher interest rates, it does make more sense for us to pay those houses down, those vehicles down more aggressively, maybe than we would when we have the lower interest rate. Is that clear as mud for everybody? I'm not going to ask for direct feedback, but I think these slides are accessible at some point, right, Chelsea, after this. So you can kind of go back and use these as examples for your own life as well, too. So that brings us back to it, right? How do I decide to pay off debt or invest? That's a big question that we talk about a lot and then I get asked a lot. And the simple answer is think about your goals. Is it more important for you to be debt free, or is it more important for you to make the most interest that you can? And that's something I would challenge all of us to think through. And then when you're trying to think through that, there are some awesome online calculators. I've got some links at the very end of my presentation to those calculators that you can type in. You can type in your debt and see what it's going to cost you and try to make those decisions very informed. So just think through that about your life when you're talking through your goals, thinking through your goals. Do you want to be debt free and financially independent in that situation? Or do you want to try to make the most money you can from the interest difference? So in my personal experience, I think the best solution is to do a little bit of both, right? So what we did, and this is kind of starting out, right? We came out of college, a ton of student loan debt. We paid for all of our own college kind of on our own. So, we came out with big student loans. And so what we did to start was we did the 401k match. We had a 6% match. We contributed 6% on our own. And then after that, we used the excess of our funds to do a really aggressive debt pay down strategy. And paid down as much debt as we could as quickly as we could. The good thing of that is we were out of debt. We had more access to cash. And in the situation, we got out of debt really quickly. We were super aggressive. We, worked extra jobs. Like I drove some Uber when I was in grad school. I know my wife took on some freelancing projects to try to get some more cash to pay down debt. Once we got to that place where we were out of debt, and it can happen much quicker than you think, we had access to cash, and that's awesome, right? Now we have a lot more freed up cash to do things with. The bad is we did miss out on some of those early years of investment gains, not going forward. So, like I said, I think my solution to this, from our personal experience, is to try to do both. Do some investment early, and try to aggressively pay down your debt, especially that high interest rate debt. But there are some give and trades back and forth, right? So that's not a clear, direct path of here's what you guys should do, but that's a good example of what we did. It worked out very, very well for us. But you got to decide for yourself, hey, do I want to get out of debt quick and try to be aggressive at that? Or do I want to be more aggressive with my investment strategies? And am I okay with some of this low interest rate debt? All right, we talked a lot about investments in the debt category. Now we're gonna jump into investments as well. So just a little bit of pre-knowledge here. This slide just kind of giving us some examples of what is Roth, what is traditional. That's something important for us to understand. I'm sure we've all heard that, especially around IRAs or 401ks. We've heard the 401k Roth and the 401k traditional, right? So what are those? So Roth is, you can think about it as you're going to pay the taxes now. So it's the money that's going to come out of your account after you have paid taxes on it. So kind of like back to our example, if we make $5,000 a month, we take out the 22% in taxes, the Roth contribution will come after you've already paid taxes on that money. So the nice thing about that is the withdrawal is tax-free and all the growth is tax-free. So when you contribute to a Roth and you go to withdraw from that account, maybe when you retire, all the money's going to come out. You're not going to have to pay taxes on it because you already did before you put it in the account. Okay. Traditional is the exact opposite. It's going to come out before you pay taxes on it. So you're going to see that $5,000 monthly income. Then you're going to take out directly out of that $5,000 is your contribution to whatever account in a traditional account. And then you're going to get taxed on the amount after you've already contributed. Okay, so basically you're deferring those taxes to your retirement. Now, the nice thing about that is it does lower your immediate taxable income, but you will have to pay taxes on it when you withdraw during your retirement. So 2 different periods there. And basically the best way to decide is, do you think your taxes are going to be higher when you retire, or are your taxes going to be lower when you retire, right? If they're going to be higher, which is the belief of most people, then a Roth is the best way to go. And that would be my recommendation for any of us, who, especially who are in our younger career path, 5-10 years or less into our careers. Following that Roth option is going to be great because it's going to allow our money to grow tax-free. And then when we get to a point of retirement, we'll be able to withdraw it tax-free. If you are in a really high income situation right now, and your goal is to lower your taxable income, maybe you're trying to play the tax game a little bit, that is where I think traditional comes in, and you can do some traditional reductions to get your current taxable income down. So I said 401k and IRA a lot, and what are those, right? What is a 401k and what is an IRA? All those are classifications of accounts, okay? That's all they are. 401k is the name of a specific type of retirement account. IRA is the name of another specific type of retirement account. 401ks are all through your employer. IRAs are all through you or through the financial institution that you work with. So whether that's Chase or Fidelity or Robinhood, they all offer IRAs and you can contribute to those. There is a limit of what you can contribute. To a 401k, it's $23,500 this year. To an IRA, it's $7,000. Both of those account classifications come in traditional, and they both come in Roth. So you can do that. One thing that's very, very important, and I want all of us to make sure that we do at the end of this, if you have not done that, to be sure. When you're putting money in an IRA or you're putting money in a 401k, that's just the account. That is not the investment. So you do need to invest that money once it's in the account. So go log into your retirements, log into your 401k and your IRAs, and check to be sure that that money is invested into stocks, or that money is invested into bonds, or whatever the index funds you're working with. It's really important, okay? Some companies will do it for you automatically. You can sign up for automatic investment services, but make sure that money is being invested. Otherwise, you're not going to get any growth. It's just going to be sitting there, and you're going to be missing out on all the interest.
Hey, Jake.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question in the chat. Are we correct? Am I correct that a Roth also doesn't have a required minimum distribution in retirement as well?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Thank you.
It gives you more flexibility on the distribution piece as well, too. Yeah, that is correct. And then a brokerage account, last point of investment, that's just an account where you can buy assets or sell assets. It's just like a checking account, but used for investments. It's used to hold those investments. So once again, just another account classification. All right, so a couple more things here, right? We've heard of capital gains tax. What is capital gains tax? There's 2 basically periods it's broken into. A short-term capital gains tax, that's an asset you've held less than a year. So that would be like buying a stock in January and selling it in February, right? And that's taxed just like your income. So it's taxed at whatever income percentage you're at. And then there's long-term capital gains tax. That's when you buy a stock, you hold it for longer than a year, and depending upon what tax classification you're in, you'll be taxed 0, 15, or 20%. So just for those of us who have heard a lot of different things in the media right now around capital gains tax, this is what it is. And when you're investing, you should just be aware. If you're holding an asset short term, you're going to get taxed like income. If you're holding it more long term, there are some advantages depending on where your income level is, but there usually are advantages to that holding it for longer than a year. How much do I invest? This is a great question. And the best way I can tell you to answer that is to start with the end goal in mind. So what is your goal? How much do you want to make in retirement? What does that look like? And do what you need to do now to get to that goal, right? So think through what you want your life to look like, what you want your retirement to look like. You don't necessarily need hard answers. You don't need like, I'm going to have this is my perfect budget for retirement. You can, that's great. But you don't need to. You just need to have a good idea of, I want to travel this much. I want to live in this kind of house or these types of houses, whatever your situation looks like. And then remember that 10% of investments never really hurt anyone. I mean, if it may hurt in the short term, if you're not doing any investments right now, you may miss it. But in the long term, as your guys' income builds, as you advance in your careers, 10% will get washed out pretty quickly. Especially if you're starting from the beginning, 10% never really hurt anyone when we're talking about investments. And then asset diversification is key. I gave some examples here of a diversity strategy with an S&P, large cap, small cap, real estate, and international indexes there, and some percentages to invest in that. Some people, or there's a lot of knowledge going around right now of putting 100% in the S&P 500. And so that is an option as well too, and is something that's pretty de-risked, especially in a long-term situation. And then as you go on, there's things like bonds and high yield savings accounts, which are super, super de-risked. They're very, very safe type investments, but the yields are a lot smaller. So if you're in a long-term investment strategy or someone who's younger, just starting out, those types of safe things are not going to be a high part of your portfolio. If you're someone who's getting more closer towards retirement, you're going to start moving some of those assets more towards bonds, more towards high yield savings, when you have a larger value that you're trying to de-risk. So once again, this is available for the slides. I'm not going to dive super deep into that, but those are some different strategies you guys can use if you're wanting to invest on your own. So big key concept here we're going to get with retirement investment accounts is, what is the value of my money over time and what does that look like? So this is a great example. I'm going to have a couple different examples of this. And once again, we're going to kind of breeze through them, but come back to the slides and reference. This is all for you guys. So let's say we've got 20 grand to invest. We're going to put it in the market, which averages about 8%. That means it's going to double every 7 years. So what does that look like? If I start at 18, when I'm 65, how much would that $20,000 have grown to? About 725,000. If I start at 21, it's over $500,000. Start at 24, it's just about $500,000. If I start at 30 and 40, those are kind of the perspective differences. So this is just to give you guys an idea of compound interest and the value of my money over time and how much it can really grow to. All we did in this situation was put $20,000 in the market. It grew at 8%. We never put any more money in. And then this is what we had at 65 when we were ready to retire. Well, let's say we do the same example. Let's contribute $100 a month. That's it, right? So we're going to start with 20,000 in the initial imbalance. We're going to contribute $100 a month. What do those same age brackets look like? As you can see, just by contributing $100 a month, boom, we're talking about big numbers. The person that started at 18 and the person that started at 21, they're millionaires. They're basically very, very close to the millionaire situation. So just starting early, letting your money compound over time is absolutely huge. So let's talk about a real world example of that. So let's start from $0, right? We have $0 in investment account. We make $40,000 a year. We're going to contribute 10% to our 401k, and our company is going to give us a 4% match. So this is a pretty common real world situation. And once again, we're going to use that market average of 8%. What does that look like? So if we started at 18, we have $2.5 million. If we started at 21, we have $2 million. 24, $1.5 million, right? You guys can see crazy increases, crazy buildup. And these are what our retirement accounts will look like when we go to retire, just by doing a very small 10%, never changing our salary or our income and getting that 4% match. Now, if we think about it a little bit more real world, right? Because hopefully all of us are growing our incomes over time. So let's say just halfway through our life, we get some magical raise to $80,000 for the simpleness of math. So, the first half of our investment, we're going to be $40,000. The second half, we're going to be $80,000. We're going to invest 10% of our income the whole time with the 4% company match. So there's kind of all the math broken down of what that looks like. And here's where we're at, right? So even at 30, if we start at 30, we're still over the $1 million mark when we get to retirement, right at the 65 age. So start early, start investing. It's super, super important. And here's the value of your money over time, right? Now, quick little fun infograph here for us is, right, who wants to be a millionaire? I think the answer is all of us, hopefully. If we're going to invest one time, this is what we need to invest at that age to get to $1 million in retirement. Okay. So if you're 18 and you want to make one investment, you need $27,000. You let it compound at 8% over your lifetime, you'll be a millionaire. Same for 20. If you're 30, you invest $61,000 at 30, you let it compound to 65, you'll be a millionaire. It's that easy and it's that simple. Now, let's say that what do we need to invest monthly? Let's do this a little more real. If we start with $0, how much do we need to put in each month at those respected ages to get to that $1 million point? Here we are, right? So if you start at 18, you start at 21, really low commitments, right? It only takes $190 a month to get us to that $1 million price point. As we grow in age and we lose some of the time, then it does take a little bit more money. But once again, just a good example of, hey guys, if you want to be millionaires, here's the key. This is how you do it. It's this easy. It's this simple. These are the steps that you can take to do that, right? Pick an index fund, pick an amount that you're comfortable with investing and invest. Do it now, and we will get there. And I do apologize. I'm starting to pick up my speed a little bit here, only because I'm looking at the time and realizing I'm longer winded than I thought I would be. So
No worries, Jake. I just put in the chat. We're gonna keep it going. But if
okay.
you do need to hop, totally respect that time too for those on the call.
Awesome. Absolutely. Okay, so real world example for retirement and how much do you need? So we're gonna kind of think through some different things here: inflation rates, lifestyle, location. You're going to kind of think through where you want to live, what that looks like, what your lifestyle you want to live, right? How much travel do we want? Do we want to go visit family? Do we want to spend money on grandkids? All those types of things, and try to get that down to a monthly figure that you're comfortable with. So here's an example. I want to live in Indianapolis, so that's about the national average. So we're not going to do a cost of living adjustment there. I want to take 1 to 2 trips per year, about $12,000 for those trips. I'm going to have about $7,500 in monthly expenses. Kind of just a breakdown of where that all comes from and what that looks like. So if we're going to draw 7 to 8% per year, which is about what our market money is growing for, right? Or the income we'll make off of that money, right? At the market growing at 7 or 8%. To get to that monthly income figure, where do we need to be, right? And that monthly figure is about $14,000. So where do we need to be in our accounts to get that, right? So I put together this kind of simple chart for you guys here, right? So if the monthly income you want in retirement is on the left, $12,000 to $20,000, just as an example of monthly income, the investment target amount is on the right. So this is a simple, easy situation you guys can kind of reference back to and say, okay, I want $20,000 a month, so I know I need about $3 million in my retirement account once we get there. So find that monthly income number, use that to get the target amount number, and then use the target amount number to understand how much we need to invest or what percentage we need to invest to get there. Hopping off of investments and going on to financial advisors, they can be really great, right? Can be really good to evaluate your situation and help you make your goals. My wife and I have consulted with a financial advisor a couple times in our life and have brought us some really good pieces of advice. We're both pretty high W-2 income earners, and so the majority, that's not meaning that doesn't mean we make a ton of money. That means a lot of our income comes from our W-2 or from our jobs. So because of that, our financial advisor pointed out, hey, it's really important for you guys to have some extra insurance because so much of your money comes from your jobs. You want to be a little more protected. So that was just a good example. He brought up, hey, maybe we need to up our life insurance. Maybe we need to increase some of our disability or third-party disability liability insurance, some of those types of things to make sure that if one of us lost our jobs, one of us got hurt, one of us died, for goodness sake, that we were protected or the other person was protected. So that was some good perspective that we got from a financial advisor that we wouldn't have thought of or we didn't think through fully kind of on our own. So they can help push you in the right direction or guide you in the right direction to answer your goals or to meet the goals that you want to do. Now, like I said, watch out for some scammers. There are a lot of financial advisors, or more importantly, there are a lot of insurance salespeople that will masquerade as financial advisors. So some of their goals may be to sell you insurance, and some of their goals may be to manage your money because they can make a commission or a percentage off of that. So just be careful. If you want someone else to manage your money, it is going to cost you for that to happen. Maybe be watching out for people that are charging a percentage or excuse me, that are charging a fixed fee and not people that are going to charge you a percentage. So if they're charging you a fixed fee, no matter what your money does, whether it goes up or down, right, they're going to charge you for that. The people who are charging a percentage, they're only going to make money when you make money. So they're going to be more invested in your financial success. There's more of an incentive for them to help make you money or to help grow your accounts. So just be kind of mindful of those. And then do watch out for the guys that are just trying to sell insurance and they're using financial advisor as a masquerade title to sell insurance. So do watch out for some of those red flags. Another piece of advice: get an accountant. If you're in a really simple financial situation and you can very easily do your taxes online, then I totally understand if that's something you want to do. As you get older in your career and you get to a point where time is important, and you want to be important about how you spend that time or be intentional how you spend that time, get an accountant because they will send you so much. They will save you so much time, so much energy, and honestly, it's much cheaper than you think. And the stress that it will save is big, right? So once you get to that point in your career where your taxes get slightly more complicated, consult an accountant. It's one of the best things you've ever done. I promise you that. All right, so here's some apps and some technology to kind of help you out. Like I said, Robinhood, a great investing app. They have an IRA match, which is crazy and unheard of. So for your personal IRA that you contribute money to, they will give you, I think it's a 2% match. Robinhood's super easy friendly. And right now they have a 4% cash sweep on an invested money in your brokerage account. And what that means is you open up a brokerage account with Robinhood and you leave money in it, just like a savings account. There is a 4% interest rate that they're giving you on that money in your account. So if you want to use it as a savings account, you can do that and earn 4%, which is really, really high interest on money just sitting in an account with no investments or any other things like that. And then you can also invest out of that brokerage account as well too. So just a tip there, you can use your Robinhood brokerage account like a high yield savings account at 4%. It's really, really great. I would recommend everyone take advantage of that as well if they can. Fidelity app is awesome. We use Fidelity as well for our retirements, for our IRAs, and for our general brokerage. Our health savings account is also in Fidelity. So their app is super easy to use. It's a great platform, and they have really, really low cost index funds for you to be able to invest some of your funds into and not have to pay very much money to do that. So Fidelity is a great option as well too. Like I talked about on the budgeting piece, all the banking apps or all the large banking companies have some sort of budgeting feature that you can use to kind of track the in and out of your money, especially in a simple budgeting form. But if you want to get more in depth, Rocket Money, EveryDollar, those are some good examples of budgeting tools that you can use to get deeper into your budget and to get more into that moderate or thorough budget category. I did say we were going to hit some financial advice pieces. So here's a couple. We'll kind of run through these real quick. There's a lot of bad advice on social media. So always double check your facts. Always make sure you guys are doing a quick Google search to understand, hey, and then make sure you're using a reputable source to find that information, right? The IRS, Fidelity, Rocket Money, they're all really good about publishing financial articles or advice articles. So use them as sources. Use some of those large investment firms as sources because they're going to publish, excuse me, really reputable advice and reputable knowledge. So use them as fact checks against some of the things that you might hear. And some of those things that you might hear, right, is like one of the more trending financial advice on TikTok right now is take out a credit card and then max your credit card out and declare bankruptcy. This is a horrible idea. Do not do that. Please, that is horrible financial advice. Both the TikToks I watched that recommend this had like 100,000 likes and like they were like super viral. It was insane. Please do not do that. That is not a life hack. That is a terrible decision. Once again, Venmo is a savings account. People are starting to use their Venmo accounts to save money. This money is not insured and you're not getting any interest. So if Venmo crashes or if Venmo decides to take your money, I mean, that's very possible, right? So there's no government insurance or government back behind that account. And once again, it's just sitting there doing nothing. It's not making any money. It's not working for you, right? And we saw the value of our money over time and what it can do when it works for us. So make sure you're using reputable accounts to save your money and reputable institutions that provide you with good interest rates. So what another piece, pay for everything with a credit card. This can be good, but it can be risky. Okay, so this is a good piece of advice when you do it well and you're disciplined. Like we saw the example under using credit card points, right? We're paying off that credit card every month and we're using it like a debit card. It can be good, but it is risky because if we overspend, we saw how quickly that 18 to 20% interest rate can hit us and hit us really, really hard and get us in a situation where we're drowning in credit card debt. So credit cards can be good, but it's very, very risky. You're going to have to understand your own tolerance and your own discipline on that. Early on in my life, I was not disciplined enough to do that, right? I racked up credit card debt and it was horrible. It's a bad situation. It took us a while to dig out of, right? Now, later on in our life, where we have a much more structured plan with our finances, we do use credit cards for all of our daily transactions and we reap the benefits. But we did have to learn a pretty hard lesson early on in that. So make that decision on your own and for yourself. Save as much money as you can. That is not always good advice. So we want to make sure that we're having fun and living our lives and we're investing and we're saving for what we need to, but not necessarily excessive, right? And when we do just save all of our money, it's not necessarily working for us. So if you say saving is investing, then it's a good thing. If you're just putting all your money in a savings account and it's just sitting there, it's not working for you, it's not gaining high interest, then that's not good advice because we want our money to be working for us as much as it possibly can. And then putting all your money into one index fund. This can be good for the short term, but the long term, you really want to diversify. And that's kind of where go back, reference some of those slides and how I showed there's different percentages in different index funds that can allow you to kind of simply diversify your money. And that way, when the S&P market kind of takes a hit, maybe some of the other investments will kind of help hold that up, right? Diversity is key in all things when investing.
Hey, Jake, we've got a
Yep,
question in the chat.
absolutely.
Um, I have heard not to spend money out of HSA accounts and save this money as a bonus at retirement. What can you speak to on this?
Yep, that's good, and that's a good question and a complex question. It doesn't come with a very simple answer, so I'll try to make the answer as simple as I possibly can. Um, I'm a believer in your HSA is an opportunity for you to save money that is tax free or spend money that is tax free on your health needs, and that is the that is the main purpose of your HSA. So we both, my wife and I, spend money out of our HSA for our medical needs because that is the sole purpose of that account. Now, we contribute to that account with that goal in mind, meaning we don't put all of our investment money, we don't max out our HSA contributions. We invest enough in our HSA to cover our medical needs for the year, or our potential medical needs for the year, and allow that to build. Now, on the flip side, like I said, this is not an easy question, an easy answer. That money does grow tax-free and you can withdraw it tax-free. So while growing your HSA balance and investing that money and allowing it to grow into retirement is a good thing and is positive and will allow you to have a good nest egg and a good buildup of financial money in your retirement era or your retirement phase to be able to spend on healthcare. That is beneficial and that can be very helpful. So it is kind of what you do with it. I will say an HSA account should not be treated solely as an investment account. That is my answer to that question holistically, right? Don't be afraid to spend that money on your medical expenses when they come, because that's what it's there for. But on the flip side, growing that account and allowing that money to invest and work for you and double over time is a good strategy for when you get to retirement. Don't just, the caveat to that, make sure you're doing the 401k and the IRA investments first, and you're not just solely investing in your HSA. That's the goal, I will say there, because that money is only for medical expenses. It will not pay your bills in retirement or pay all of your bills in retirement, right? So make sure we're doing the other things as well too. And if we want to invest in our HSA or put more into our HSA so it does grow and it does develop over time, that is a good path. But not spending any of that money is not necessarily the best advice. Or it is a piece of advice, right? So I hope that answer is really clear. I tried to give you all both sides of it because it is one of those things that it can be a strategy. I don't think it should be your only strategy. All right, so we're kind of getting a wrap up phase here. I've got 2 more slides. Thanks for everyone for hanging on a little bit more and dealing with all my long-windedness, but just a couple key messages and takeaways, right? Figure out what you're worth. Make sure you're talking with your mentors. Don't be afraid to ask for things in negotiations, right? Especially if we have the logic built up behind the ask and what we're asking for. Start budgeting. Anything is better than nothing. If you're not budgeting now, jump on with a simple budget. If you maybe have a simple budget, maybe work on stepping it up to a moderate or to a thorough budget to help accomplish your goals. And then make some long-term plans and goals, right? Think about what you want your life to look like in retirement and then start planning for it. Invest right now, today. If you're not investing, go start. Add to your 401k. Open up a Roth IRA online through Fidelity or through Chase or whatever your banking organization is. It's super easy. You can do it all online and start putting some money in it. Do check your retirement accounts to make sure that money is invested and it's not just sitting there. And then use the resources you need to get where you want. And make sure we're watching out for scammers like we talked about. So last slide here, I have a couple of FAQs I thought I would answer real quick for everyone who wants to stay on and listen through those 5 FAQs. These are pretty common financial questions, right? Number 1, is your emergency fund sufficient? And so how much basically do I put in an emergency fund, and then where do I put it? That comes back to that Robinhood account like we talked about, right? They have a 4% interest rate, so all the money you're putting in your Robinhood account or that in brokerage account, using it like a savings account, you have 4% interest, so your money's going to grow. That's a really high interest rate for a savings type account. So put it in there. Try to find a high yield savings account. And then I recommend 3 to 6 months worth of true expenses. So not necessarily your lifestyle, right? If you're going out to eat a bunch and you're going on vacations and trips, but your basic expenses, bills, mortgages, kind of the bare necessities of what you'd need to live your life or to get by for that 3 to 6 months period. So it's good to have an emergency fund built up if that's something you're comfortable with. I have other friends that live their lives and say, hey, credit cards are my emergency fund. Now, do I personally agree with that? No. But if they're comfortable with that risk, then that's something they do there. How do I build good credit? You have to buy it, unfortunately. That's the only way to build good credit. So creating a credit history, having a credit card or having a mortgage, paying your utility bills on time and over a long period of time is the only way to kind of build up good credit. So, how do I differentiate between good and bad debt? And we kind of worked through that example, but basically, if you want to sum it down, good debt has an ROI built into it, right? So if you're spending on debt at 3%, but you're returning at 7%, that could be good debt because you're making 4% on that debt, right? Bad debt has a negative ROI. So we're paying debt at 7% or 10% or 12%, and we're only making it 5, 6, 7%, right? So that's kind of the hard differentiator between good and bad debt. Good debt has an ROI, bad debt does not. What is investment fatigue and how do I avoid it? So investment fatigue is over investing at a rate where you're sacrificing all the lifestyle that you want. So maybe when you're young and you're in your 20s, as an example, you still want to go out to the bars, or you want to go out with your friends, you want to go on trips, you want to do that sort of stuff. It's totally okay to do that, right? And it's great to save up the money to do that. It's great to have a budget that incorporates that. But some people, when they're really young, they'll just invest every single penny of their excess income. And while this does set them up for a great period of life later on, it can be really, really hard to stay disciplined and to sacrifice all those things early on in your life. So that's why I've been so important today. Make sure we have a balance, make sure we have a goal. We know that, let's say we want that $20,000 a month in retirement. We need to get to $3 million. Let's invest what we need to get there. But then after that, let's remember, hey, let's go out and have fun. Let's enjoy our lives. Let's spend our money that we work really hard to earn on some fun things as well, too. And then the last one, the thoughts on the 50-30-20 rule. This is a budgeting rule that's kind of come up in popular belief or popular culture, right? Basically, it's you spend 50% of your income on your bills and your needs, and then you spend 30% on your wants, your trips, your vacations, your savings, and then 20% gets invested or goes towards debt. I think that's a great, simple strategy to get you started, right? If that's where you want to start at that point, you want to start breaking up your income into those buckets and you're investing / paying down debt with 20%, you're kind of having fun with 30%, and then 50% pays all your bills. That's a great rule of thumb to start. Make sure that that investing rate will accomplish your goals, right? So if you can accomplish your goals with that 20% investment strategy, or if your goal is to pay down debt really fast and you can accomplish that in the time frame you want, then this is a great rule of thumb. If not, then you may need to adjust some of those percentages and to try to get to your goals, right? So good strategy to start with. Incorporate that into a budget and then make it your lifestyle. Once again, here's a couple resources. Calculator.net is absolutely amazing. Tons of pre-made online calculators. They're very accurate, excuse me. Some of the ones I use today for the presentation are home payments, car payment calculators, the compounding interest calculator. Use that to calculate your investments, and then the mortgage payoff calculator as well too, to understand how much you owe on your home and how much debt you're going to pay, or how much interest, excuse me, you're going to pay on that house over time. And then once again, the Every Dollar app, highly recommend. It's a great app to get you kind of started in the budgeting experience. So with that is everything. Any last minute questions for anyone who stuck it out for the duration?
Jake, we did have a question in the chat. Can you talk a little more about life insurance? For example, can you ever invest too much in it?
Yeah, you definitely can. So there's two basic types of life insurance. There's whole life insurance and there's term life insurance. So term life insurance is kind of the simple strategy. You're going to set a term, whether it's 20, 30, 40 plus years. And in that period of time, you're going to be covered with a specific amount of life insurance. So let's say I'm going to set a 30-year term. And over the next 30 years, I'm going to be covered with $500,000 of life insurance, right? So if something happens to me, the insurance company is going to pay out to my beneficiary, in this case would be my wife, that $500,000, right? To cover that. And I'm going to pay a small monthly fee for the next 30 years to cover that life insurance, right? So that's the life insurance that I use, with the assumption that at the end of that 30-year term, I will have built up enough investments, enough kind of capital situation that if something were to happen to me, there would be my own money at the end of that 30 years to be able to cover those expenses. On the flip side, there's whole life. And whole life insurance is where you're going to be paying in a much larger sum of money, right? So that monthly payment, for $500,000 of 30-year term life insurance for a young, healthy 30-year-old could be $20 a month, right? $30 a month, $50, somewhere in that range. Whole life insurance, you're going to be paying $150, $200, $300 a month. Now that they take that money and they invest a portion of it, right? And so it allows that kind of to grow. You're not going to be necessarily guaranteed a specific figure like you are with the term life. So it is going to grow over time, and there is some potential benefits. You can leverage or borrow against it. You can access that money a little bit early for different expenses if you need to. But on the downside, right, is that they're going to take a percentage or a cut, the insurance company, out of that investment growth and out of that investment fees. So my thought process on life insurance, and like I said, this is my personal opinion for you guys. I like the term policy because I'm just counting that as a monthly expense, right? That $30 a month or whatever I pay, that's a monthly expense. I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to take the difference in what I would pay in a whole life policy. So maybe it's $120, $130. I'm going to invest that in my own accounts. It's going to grow at the same rate. And that way the insurance company is not necessarily getting their cut, right? That's my philosophy on it. There's no right or wrong answer. They're just two different strategies. I think as far as investing, in life insurance, you should not treat that as an investment strategy to accomplish your goals. So as long as you're meeting your goals through your other investment accounts, your other strategies, if life insurance, just like the HSA, wants to be a tertiary goal that you kind of create and say, hey, I've got this investment working for me over here as well too, I would say that's fine. Let's make sure you're accomplishing all your goals with your other investment strategies first, and then use things like life insurance or HSA as other potential goals. Hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. We don't have any other questions in the chat unless I've missed something. Anybody want to come off mute and ask a final question before we end the presentation?
Hi there. Am I coming through well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted to contribute a little bit to people's awareness on a subject that I hope people will take some time to learn about. In 2021, I started down a path of, I've probably been in econ and finance research as a hobby for 10 years, but in 2021, I really got down the track of the plumbing of the financial system, the markets, etc., and found out a lot of shocking things. And then in 2023, there was a free book published. I'm gonna struggle with the guy's name. I think his name was David Rogers Webb. And he wrote a book called The Great Taking. And I just want to, it confirmed a lot of things that I had been studying for the previous 2 years. So, which is that if you have a brokerage account or you have a 401k, etc., the way that those things are structured on a legal level is that you don't actually own the securities that are in these accounts. And ultimately, those accounts are subject to emergency measures at the minimum, in which those all the value that we think is there and it's ours, or that the securities themselves, the equities, bonds, etc., are not necessarily ours. Mm-hmm. They're not right now, actually, legally speaking. And in the event of an emergency that could be declared. Sorry, I'm looking off to my screen where I see you guys and not looking at the camera. But
You're good.
All of that could be taken from you, and I don't want to get into why or what circumstances that might happen. Just know that that there is a plethora of laws, not just in state by state, that back up what I'm saying. This is around the global issue, and people are now undertaking to try to solve that, so some of emergency cannot be declared, and then the secured parties. Sorry, I don't want to throw too much lingo at you. What I just want to bring awareness up to is that if you have these sorts of accounts, be thinking about alternatives, and be thinking about how to protect your wealth on multiple layers. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Kerry. I think diversity is key, right? And I tried to have that in multiple slides of, hey, making sure that the more diverse we can create our wealth and our financial portfolios, the better. And I think Kerry brings up a great point, right? Diversity in account types is super important, right? And what he was speaking to as a 401k is that, and he's 100% correct, right? There are state of emergencies that can be declared where 401k money can be taken or can be borrowed, from us, right? And so to protect that, there are some other, people are using other types of accounts, more independent brokerage accounts, more IRA, right, level accounts, to move some of that money around. So
I really probably pigeonholed it too much, because even your regular bank accounts are subject to these rules.
Correct.
And and I guess I need to take up the mantle for myself here in my own state. I need to get involved on the legislative front, and so part of that diversification that you're talking about is the diversification of our efforts into taking some political action probably is what's necessary. It's when you just think about it, that someone undertook to make all these rules on a worldwide front so that all of our accounts are subject to seizure. Well, why? So that's I'll leave it at that.
Thanks for the insights, Carrie. That was good.
Absolutely. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? I didn't see any in the chat. All righty. Oh, go ahead, Courtney. Are you trying to come off mute?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. I just have a really quick question. So when you talked about these budgeting tools like Every Dollar, Quicken, Monarch Money, a lot of them have subscriptions to utilize like the most resources. So I guess my question is how much money is appropriate to spend on a budgeting tool, and then how much is like the company just trying to take advantage of you and like you spending too much money on budgeting, if that question makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I'll be honest, Courtney, I resisted the subscription services for as long as I possibly could. And with Every Dollar as an example, right? I think we pay $79 a year or $80 to $85. I can't remember exactly. It's in my budget, but we do the yearly expenses. We're pretty committed to that. I would say for us, we very quickly realized the tracking our money and the ability for us to change categories or save money in current situations just by having all that information was worth much more. I would say our ROI on that specific investment was extremely high. So if you're not comfortable with it and you want to do some of the extra work that goes with it for the free service, right? A lot of those budgeting apps add a free service. What I would push a little bit more, if you're someone who wants to get into a more thorough budget where everything, basically every transaction is categorized, it's going to be worth every penny paying a subscription service. So because you're able to adjust those categories, you're able to understand where your money goes, you're gonna accomplish your goals much quicker. And sometimes you got to pay to play, right? That's just the unfortunate. We live in a capitalistic society, right? So everything costs us money to move forward. So that is something that I would say if you're comfortable with it. But it did take me some time to kind of get over that. But once I got over that, like I said, it's a tool we utilize so much. It's worth every single penny because what we've been able to do with our money, because we understand where it all is and where it all goes, right?
Awesome. Thank you.
Jake, do you have time for another question if there is any? I want to be
course.
respectful of your time too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? You want to come off mute? All right.
Oh,
Go
can you
ahead.
hear me? Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So I have 2 young kids and want to see what your advice is on investing, either like the 529 or right now they have a high yield savings account, and want to kind of see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the 529 gets a little rabbit hole in how you use those expenses. So I would just say my thought on that is if you can accomplish those goals, if you can accomplish those goals outside of, if your main goal is to save for your kids for college, right? And that's your main goal and that's what you want to do, then that 529 deal is a good deal. If you can figure out a way to save outside of that, whether through, and then you got to weigh the taxes piece, right? So my thought is if your main goal is to save for college, the 529 is a decent rabbit hole to go down because of some of the tax benefits that you and your kids are going to receive from that. If you think there's a chance your kids aren't going to use it for higher education, and they're going to use it, maybe to buy a house or to do some other types of things, right? Then I would invest I would invest and save for them outside of one of those accounts, either in a regular brokerage type account. Even starting your kids an IRA at a very early age can be really beneficial for them as well too in the long term. But yeah, it's a math equation that you're going to have to do and understand, hey, is rabbit holing that money just for higher education or other, post-secondary education, we'll say, Is that kind of the goal of that, or do I want them to be more flexible with it? And am I willing to pay the price for that flexibility? Is that fair? That's a very gray answer. I apologize, Kim.
No, it's good. I understand because I was looking at kind of like the loopholes of what they could use it for if they didn't spend it all too. But right now, just looking at that option, because they do, like I said, they have a high yield savings, so they have more flexibility, but kind of have to see maybe there's a smaller portion that I put in a 529 for that purpose and then do more towards their high yield savings.
And I do think there are some backdoor rollover options out of 529s that you can either chat with an accountant, or because I'm not giving out any accounting advice today. I'm definitely not licensed for that. So there are some other rollover options if they decide not, that money isn't just stuck in a 529 forever. So I do think there are some rollover fees and some situations where you can get it into other options as well. But that would be a accountant question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Great questions. All right. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Mark just had to get his 2 cents in, huh? Thanks, Mark. That is helpful.
The AFA voice. I love it. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, Jake, thank you so much for spending the time and your knowledge with everyone here. I think at one point I saw 60 people were on the call, plus this is being recorded. So your knowledge is going to be shared out with many more afterwards as well. Thank you so much for sharing how to master our money and make it work for us. Very appreciative of your time. Everyone on the call, please, as you're exiting out, be sure to save the date for our next AFA webinar series on April 16th. We're talking avian flu and how that's going to affect your price of eggs or not. Who knows? April 16th is a month away. And also, don't forget, this is being recorded. It's going to be included in your follow-up email. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.